Hey, Taylor Casper here. I help parents make sure that if something were to happen to them, that their children would still be well taken care of through comprehensive estate planning. There are a lot of things that parents maybe haven't thought about with respect to their minor children when it comes to doing their estate planning. So there first and foremost aren't even that many people in America that have their estate planning done. I think I looked it up on CNBC, had a survey about it, and like 33% of people in America have done their estate planning. Um, and if you've done it, great. You already have a huge leg up on so many other people that are not taking the proactive steps to care for their family that you have already done. But for parents, a lot of times with their estate planning, when they decide they're going to do it, the driving factor and driving motivation is to make sure that they've named guardians for their minor children in the event of their death. And that is phenomenal. We want parents deciding proactively who's raising their children, who's managing their children's finances if the parent were to be deceased, if you die. This is critical stuff. But there are so many other things that you should think about with respect to your minor children in the event of not only your death, but what about your incapacity? So that looks like, say you're married and you and your spouse, either one of you or both of you becomes incapacitated. Somebody has a car accident and somebody has a surgery, somebody becomes sick. Oftentimes, if one parent in the family unit, one parent of the couple becomes incapacitated by reason of illness, major serious injury or something to that effect, the other parent is spending either a lot of time at work making up the financial shortfall or a lot of time caring for the incapacitated partner, spouse, parent, right? So we need to also be thinking about what are we going to have in place and who's going to take care of the children and who's going to help with the children in the event of incapacity. So not because the parent is dead or deceased, but because now the parents are unable, they're still living, but they're temporarily unable to care for minor children. So one, you want to think about naming short-term guardians in the events of incapacity of one or both of the parents by reason of illness, injury, what have you. Now, another reason you might name a short-term guardian for your child, has anybody ever gone on vacation without their kids, left the kids at home because you're in Mexico or wherever else? Well, if you're traveling without your children, taking a vacation, and one of your children were to become ill, you need to have a short-term guardianship nomination or a medical power of attorney for your minor child so that if they're staying with grandma or aunts and uncles, or they're spending a long weekend with the family friends, if they get sick, those family friends, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, do not have legal authority to consent to non-life-saving medical treatment for your child. So your child could have something needing antibiotics, they might need stitches. If it's not a life-saving situation, you have to be the person that consents to medical treatment for your child unless you've given the legal authority to consent to medical treatment to another person. And I'm telling you, as hospital administrations and doctors' offices and clinics get sued more and more, they tighten up more and more. And they're not going to be allowing, you maybe even sometimes over the phone, that is something that happens where they might call you and ask you to verbally consent, but not even everybody is allowing that. Or what if we need to call you to verbally consent or send you a DocuSign or whatever, and you're on a plane and you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have internet, you can't receive a phone call, right? You're out of the country and you only have access to your phone if it's on the Wi-Fi network and you're temporarily logged off, right? So there are situations where these things are really necessary. I've traveled for work before. I used to work for a company that I had to travel every like 8 weeks or so, and I'd be out of town. And sometimes somebody gets a bladder infection or an ear infection or whatever. And I needed a third party to be able to consent to medical treatment on their behalf, to be able to go pick up a prescription for my children. So, you want to be thinking about all the people in your life who you are sometimes leaving your children with if you're going out of town or leaving them with for a prolonged period of time. Now, you also want to make sure you've gone and you've filled out all the forms at your school or your daycare, to make sure that you've got a robust list of people who are able to be picking your children up from school, because the last thing we want is for you not to show up to pick up a child from school because you've been seriously injured or fallen ill, and now the school doesn't have anybody to call. And so what do? Eventually they have to call either 911, social services, if they can't get a hold of anybody, because the teacher can't take your child home. They don't have legal authority either. And so, how traumatizing and terrifying for a child to have to be picked up by social services, a police officer, or somebody who can take your child into custody until we can figure out where we can find a next of kin, an emergency contact, or what have you. And these things sound really simple, but you'd be surprised. There are people that really haven't filled out these forms. And if you haven't, like, I want to just let you know that these are real things that happen when we don't have anybody to pick children up. Or if you're at a school and the school's like, I can't release the child. I can't just send a child with, Uncle Joe when I don't have any documentation saying that Uncle Joe's okay to pick up Susie or whoever, right? So you want to make sure you're filling out all those forms. You want to make sure you're doing the same at your doctor's office. And then you definitely want to make sure that you're nominating short-term guardians. You're doing medical powers of attorney for minor children. And then the other thing that you really want to consider doing is you want to document everything that you can about your children's care and make sure you're providing that to the people who are going to be caring for your children on a short-term basis, potentially a long-term basis, or even just the babysitters, right? Like, you want to make sure that if you've got a child with allergies, for example, or how many people, myself included, have nominated somebody as a short-term guardian or a long-term guardian, and they don't know where your child goes to the doctor. They don't know who your child's dentist is, or maybe even sometimes what school does your child go to? What daycare do they go to? Who are the babysitters that you regularly use? Who do we call? So there's so many things you really, estate planning and doing good by your children is so much deeper than just naming a long-term guardian in your will. Right? Because a lot of times you really need to be planning for life and not just for death. So if this sounds like you, I hope you are getting some ideas and you've got some value out of this, and you can maybe start doing that work of listing down somewhere for a babysitter, for grandma and grandpa, who's the primary care provider, who's the preschool teacher, who's the dentist, who do we go to for whatever it is, right? So hopefully you can start doing that and start taking those steps to just create a really robust plan and a really clear set of instructions for caring for your minor children. It's so much more than just designating that long-term guardian in a will. Taylor Casper here, owner managing attorney of Legacy Estate Planning in Burnsville. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you never miss any information that could be relevant to you about estate planning, elder care, and business law.